I will let you take it away, Harold.
Okay, well, if you want to do your thing and then I'll start. Are you ready?
Yes, we are ready to go.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. If you see a glow in my eyes, it's not because I'm so excited about this. I just got done with what they call a nuclear stress test in Kankakee, Illinois, and God bless Jill Cummings here at the mill. She got the computer ready and got us all ready to go here. So I have 3 videos to start out with. I'm gonna, well, people are still coming in, so we'll give them just a minute or two. But I'm gonna do a little introduction to what we're doing, how we farm and our rotations and stuff. And then we'll go into the videos. And then after that, I'll kind of talk a little bit about what we're doing. If you've got questions, put them in the chat, I guess. I want this to be interactive because I want you to get questions answered that you have. So maybe we'll go through the introduction, the videos, and then if you can put your questions in the chat, we'll address them. So does that sound good with everybody? You can wave at me if you want to. So, oh yeah, there you go. All right, me too. All right.
Wonderful.
Okay.
All right. I will launch this first video. Just let me know if the sound is all right.
Okay, let me hold on a second, Liz.
Hi, this is Harold Wilkins.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, just go ahead. We'll be fine.
Is there something you need me to do?
Yeah, let's start out a little bit. First of all, we farm a little over 3,000 acres, close to 3,400 acres of organic in East Central Illinois. We're mainly based in Iroquois, but we go to Kankakee, Livingston, Ford, and we touch Vermilion County. All the farms that we farm are owned by people who want their farms to be farmed organically. And most everybody sought us out. Some of the farms, 700 acres of it was my original farm that I farmed when I was conventional. And we transitioned all that in 05 and 06. And then just depending on when we met other people that we farmed for, was when we started transition. So last year was the first year we did not transition any organic land. Otherwise, in previous years, there always seemed to be a piece of ground that we took on that we had to start from scratch. Most of the soils that we're going to be dealing with today are Ashcombe Elliott, Bryce, Swigert. There is some Pella, which is our best soils, but that's not in any of the videos today. I started looking at soil health way back in the early 80s, right after I started farming, because I thought I was doing a great job of farming and my soils kept getting tighter and cloddier. And it wasn't until later on that I realized that with the salt fertilizers and the petroleum products that we were using on the soil, such as our nitrogen, that we were killing the organisms in the soil. And that's when I started to look at rotations and cover crops, and then went organic in 2005. So we'll play these videos and then we'll talk about the rotation and things. So.
Hi, this is Harold Wilkins. I'm doing a few short videos to be able to explain to you online during the Soil Health Awareness Week. I'd like to talk a little bit about what we do and our transition and everything. And so I'm not just going to get into where I am right now. I'm standing in Livingston County, Illinois. This is our SG3 farm. We had this in wheat last year, and we weren't sure that the wheat was going to make it, so we didn't put red clover in like we normally do. So after the wheat was harvested, we planted a bushel of oats, 5 pounds of radishes, and 35 pounds of peas. And that, if you look out here, that's what our cover crop was. So this is in its second year of transition, going into third. And so I want to dig up the soil and see what we got. I'm going to tell you, I have not pre-dug, looked at what I'm going to see. I'm just doing this off the cuff, knowing kind of what our soils do. Since we're in our second year, this land is not totally transitioned to organic. And I'll explain that you can be organic in 36 months after your last application of herbicide, but it really takes 2 more years for the soil to work its way out of what it's been farmed like for 60 years into an organic system. So let's take a look at what this soil looks like at spade depth. So as we look at this soil, it's pretty blocky. It's gaining. It looks pretty good actually, but if you look at it, it's more breaks up into chunks, and it's got a ways to go yet. You don't see as much residue in the soil. You don't see as many roots as we're going to see, I think, in the farms that have been organic for 15 to 18 years. So this is our first stop. Again, this is T2, our second year of transition. And the soil isn't yet where we want it to be, and I'm not surprised by that. This is actually an Ashcombe Elliott soil, if anybody is interested. So thank you very much, and we'll be back with you in a little bit.
All right, Harold, I'll just go to the second video here. If I can get out of this.
Hi, Harold Wilkin again. We're standing here in Iroquois County on our Martin farm. We call it M2. This field has been organic since 2007. I've been farming this since 1993. Started out with it in conventional and then took it to organic in the beginning. What you're looking at here is actually a U of I test plot of organic wheats. We work with University of Wisconsin and Cornell University, and we put out a plot every year that there are actually, I think, 30 some varieties replicated 3 times. And we're looking, in the case of this, we're looking for the health of the plant, not so much yield, but quality and taste. So the varieties that we check on here, the ones that are agronomically pleasing, we'll start looking then at taste and quality. So I just wanted to mention that while we're here. So we're going to do the same thing we did in the first video. We're going to dig a spot again. Don't know what I'm going to find, but I have a feeling I know. So again, the rest of this field is planted in Warthog hard red winter wheat, which we use for all-purpose flour in the mill, as well as using it in a mixture for our artisan blend and sifted artisan. And it's our staple wheat that takes vomitoxin well and stripe rust, and it's got a pretty good disease package. So let's go back and let's look at the soil here. Okay, so what I thought, this is what happens when the soil gets healthy. This looks like chocolate cake, and it breaks up. As you can see, it isn't cloudy at all, flocculates, and if it's hard to probably tell, but look at all the masses of roots in here. And so this is what I call a healthy soil. You know, this is what we strive for on Janie's farm. We want to do a good job, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit too. We have a very simple rotation that I'm going to talk about while we're on our Zoom call. But we're making some beautiful soil out here that's going to last, as they say, for 7 generations. And what we were doing before when we were conventional was not sustainable. We just had to keep using more and more fertilizer and use more and more pesticides, and it just wasn't sustainable. And if we let nature work with us instead of us working against it, we're all better off. But again, this is what I expected we would see. Now, this soil is also in Ashcombe Elliott. It's in Iroquois County. It's about a mile and a half from our base farm. And anyway, it is in a 3-year rotation. We'll talk about that on the Zoom call. So thank you very much for watching and being a part of this program on Soil Health Week, and look forward to your questions. Take care.
Harold, that is some good looking soil. Okay, we're gonna jump into our third and final video. And again, any questions that you have them in your brain or start typing them in the chat. We'll get to those after we watch our third video.
Hi, I want to do one more video. This is actually on M1, which is a sister field to the one we were just in the wheat field. This was in corn last year, in rye the year before, and this year it'll go to soybeans. This last fall, we didn't have enough time after our corn harvest to put in rye. I really like to put in a bushel of rye after the corn is harvested, but we didn't get a chance to do that this past year. So I wanted to just dig up a little bit of soil just to see what it looks like where we have residue. Now, this field was worked with a Lemken Reuben. It's a speed disc, 24-inch notch blades, and rolling basket on the back. We make one pass in the fall. And then that actually starts the process of having the stalks break down in the soil. I kind of call what we do on Janie's farm compost farming. We try not to work the ground any deeper than 4 inches, which is where the aerobic zone is. And if you're composting in your garden or at your house, you know, you have to have air, water, and residue to make compost. So that's what we're doing here. We're, you know, the sun is beating down on the soil, so the soil's already starting to break down the residue here this spring. It got a chance to do some of that residue work last fall. If you look behind me, and you can see There was some tillage done on the ends to try and break up the compaction where we drive when we turn, but the rest of the field is just worked once. So I want to dig up where the residue is and see what we got going on with the soil breaking down, and see what we can find. And this is kind of like chocolate cake. I'm actually losing everything I was looking for on my hands. Okay, so it's hard to tell, but you can see that the residue is breaking down. This is kind of towards the surface here. And then as you get down into the lower part of it, you can see some more of that breaking down. Plus you can see some roots that are decaying, and you can just tell that the soil is working overtime here. And by the time that we put the soybeans in the spring, a lot of this residue will already be made into humus and organic matter. One of the things that I've heard about, well, what about blowing and what about washing? Well, we're pretty fortunate here that we're pretty flat, but we do have some soils that are 4 to 5%, and 4 to 5% slope. And if your soil is healthy like this, the water tends to permeate the soil. And if you do have some runoff, the soil is healthy enough that it holds together and it doesn't wash down the hill. Same way out here, this spring we'll have some 30, 40 mile an hour winds.
Nope, that's it.
Awesome. All right.
Okay.
Just gonna exit out of this. And Harold, I will let you take it away. Did you want to speak to anything, Harold, or we can review the questions that are in the chat?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about our rotation. So it's a very simple rotation. It's a 3-year rotation where, and I'm just going to use how we transition to give you an idea. So when we transition a farm, we start out the first year with soybeans, no matter what the crop was, whether it was around here, it's going to be corn or soybeans. But we start out with soybeans because there's a lot of herbicide residue still in the soil the first year. And the soybeans tend to be able to handle the herbicide residual. And so the first year we plant the soybeans, then we come back in the fall after the soybeans are combined, and we immediately go to winter wheat. So we put out Warthog, or we put out Airsman soft red winter wheat on the transition field. And then in January or February, we really like February, we go out over when the ground is frozen hard. We'd like to have a little bit of snow on it, but we will then seed in 15 pounds of red clover. And that then, as it freezes and thaws going into spring, it gets worked into the soil. When it warms up, the red clover germinates. And by the time we harvest the wheat off in the first week of July, then the red clover is 4 to 5 inches tall. I do have a picture where we got a rain at the wrong time and the red clover was 6 inches taller than the wheat. That became a problem, but we did end up harvesting it the old fashioned way where they cut it, or we cut it, put it into a windrow and then let it dry and harvest it with a combine, and we still got a crop. But most of the time the red clover is going to be under the canopy. Then once we harvest the wheat, then the sun can reach the the red clover plants, and then it starts to grow up through, and we usually leave that until April of the following year. So the red clover stays in the field all winter long until we get ready. The next year, or the third year, then goes to corn. And since that's harvested after 36 months, then the corn can be sold as organic that third year. Then we followed the corn with wheat as a cover, or with rye as a cover crop. And there's some extenuating circumstances to that. We did no-till 1 year soybeans after the corn in rye residue, but we had a lot of hard seed from the rye in. Fortunately, we had put it back into rye, but we would have had contamination in our food grade wheat if we would have put that in following the soybeans that next year. So we have to be very careful with the mill and selling food grade grains that we don't have cover crops that become a actual weed and contaminate our food grade crops. So that's our rotation. Basic as it is, we do not take any hay off. We don't take any of the residue from the wheat. We don't bale any straw. Everything goes back into the soil to become organic matter. So, we got any questions?
In the chat, Harold, it looks like Dave has a question. Does generic soil, in parentheses and quotes, does generic soil profile work for all crop types, or do you maintain slight variations in your sites to accommodate the crop needs?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Sure. Does a generic soil profile work for all crop types, or do you maintain slight variations in your sites to accommodate the crop's needs?
Well, most of the soils that we deal with here in East Central Illinois are conducive to having all the crops that we raise. We, the corn, the soybeans, the wheat, the rye. We have raised barley. We raise buckwheat when we get the chance, but there's not very many years where we can get that in. But most everything that we raise is conducive to the soil that we plant. Now, I wasn't going to mention this. For some soils that are like not very, I want to say not very, for some reason I lost my screen, Liz. There you go. All right, for some of the soils that are like low organic matter, maybe pure sand, I recommend putting in something like a kernza or a ryegrass or something that has a lot of real root density, and also put some manure or compost with that to get the bugs working in the soil. We did farm a farm with 14 acres of blow sand on it, and we were working on that sand hill when the farm got sold, but it was just starting to be productive enough to raise crops on again. But when we took it over, all it would raise is sand burrs. So, okay.
Thanks, Harold. And looks like Janet asked, I live in Albuquerque where we have alkaline soil. I do use my chicken bedding and kitchen scraps to enrich and probably lower the pH. Do you have any other suggestions for Janet?
Well, there are amendments that you can put on that will lower the pH. And I'm trying to think now because that's one thing we haven't had a lot of issues with here. We're more of an acid soil that we have to balance up the calcium and the pH on. There are some amendments that you can use, but I would recommend you to talk to an agronomist for that.
Thanks, Harold. Let's see.
And as far as our inputs, the only input we use, well, there's only two inputs we really use. One is chicken manure that has been readily available to us. And the other is potassium sulfate. We have used some gypsum in the past, gypsum has calcium and sulfur, but most of our soils are already up at the pH level and at the calcium level where we don't need much more calcium. So then if we're a little low on potassium, we do use sulfate of potash, which comes out of the mines in Utah.
Thank you. I'm gonna move down to get Matt's question in really quick, and that is, what are organic matter percentages, and do you see them increasing over time?
Oh, definitely. Most of our soils now are over 5. We've got 2 farms so our testing procedure, we test our soils when we first get them every 3 years, like when we first start farming them. And then after it's been in our program for a long time, we might wait 6, but we want to make sure that the soil is healthy first. I'm sorry, I'm having fog brain, I think, from the gamma rays. Would you repeat that, Liz?
Just, yeah, about the organic percentages, and do you see them increasing over time?
Yeah, right. And we do have some that are 7 and 8%. So.
Excellent. Thanks for the question, Matt. Thanks, Harold.
Yeah.
Maggie, she joined a little late, and we may have discussed this already, but how would you take a field that has always been in conventional and start to transition to the organic method that you're using now?
Yeah, that I talked about a little bit earlier is we start out with soybeans because it's tolerant to the herbicide residue that's still in the soil. And then we start with the small grain on the second year, and then put in the cover crop after the end of the wheat on the second year. As you may have noticed in the first video, we had put out a bushel of oats, 5 pounds of radish, and 35 pounds of peas. We did that because in the fall of 21, when we planted the wheat on that field, we planted in mud, and we were not even sure that that was going to make wheat. We did everything we could to get the wheat in, and it did survive, and we were able to keep it. But we didn't put any red clover in January because we thought we might be tearing up the soil. So if we don't get our red clover in January or February, then we wait till after harvest, and that's when we put in the triple mix there. And that then we let that grow into the next year, let it break down in the soil. So.
Thanks, Harold. And, maybe it might be fun if folks come off mute and I don't read all the questions. We can make it a little bit more of a conversation.
Yes, I would be
Um,
glad for that. Yes, please do.
Yeah, so I think, oh, I love that we landed on Tim's question to start this out with. Tim Sonder, if you're out there, would you like to ask your question? Okay, I'll ask Tim's question, but then Lisa, if you can be ready to come off mute and ask yours.
Liz, Harold kind of answered my question already, but
Oh, great. Okay.
it was do you use any inputs now, or do you just leave the residue? And you mentioned the chicken manure, although I would like to know a little bit more about how you're using that, and then the potash of what's it called? Potassium sulfate. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so the manure comes from a layer farm that is has been 22 miles away. This past year, they put in an $8 million, I think that was $8 million pelletizer. So now the manure that we have been using basically quadrupled in price. So we're actually looking at some other sources. One of the things that I'm looking at, and it's only in the experimental stage right now, but we sell soybeans to Phoenix Bean in Chicago, and her byproduct is okara. And there's a livestock farmer that's mixing the okara with manure and working on a compost product. And it's in the research stages now, and it would take an awful lot to take care of us, but we are looking for some other alternatives.
Well, I love the circular economy on that. So that would be great. And I will tell you that part of the reason why I was on mute was because I was eating her tofu.
Oh, wonderful. Yes. I'm addicted to the teriyaki tofu. So, but don't tell my conventional neighbors, they all think I eat beef.
We'll keep that secret for you, Harold.
My
Okay, well,
secret's with the 70 close friends, right?
yeah. Well, Lisa, can I pass it over to you?
Yeah. Hi, Harold.
Hi.
I'm here with my husband. We're new farmers, and we have a question for you.
So, so we precipitously last spring decided to turn the field we have, which is about 27 acres, organic. You know, we listened to one more podcast on the environment. So we did not, you know, we tried to rent equipment and the whole thing, things were broken down. So we had trouble getting a crop planted. So we didn't plant it till like Father's Day weekend, and we planted rye at that point. We had bought oat seed, but it was too late. We didn't want to ruin that. We were advised by a farmer. And so we planted the whole field in rye, and it started coming up, but by the middle of the summer, it was totally overtaken by a whole variety of terrible weeds. And then by the end of the summer, and we discovered a lot about time and farming and equipment and everything. But by the end of the summer, the weeds were huge. And we just decided at the end to let them stay in over the winter. So we're starting again this spring. I've bought some more equipment, so we are able to plant ourselves under our own schedule. We still have the oat seed we'd like to use from last year, but we're just a little confused on the best way to do this in terms of, should we mow, disc, we have a no-till drill, should we just go in with that? Just be curious about trying to get oats in early, and your advice on how to most successfully do that.
Did the weeds go to seed?
Yep.
Oh.
Ow.
And I don't suggest oats.
Okay.
I don't, I'd have to think about that, because at this point, with that kind of weed seed on top of the ground, you're looking at a very big challenge, like a very
Yeah.
big challenge. Like you almost have to have somebody turn that over and start over fresh with a clean field.
Okay,
Because I would be concerned that the weeds again would just take it over again.
okay.
So,
I was
but you know,
fear-
if you
I was
want to.
fearful of that.
What's that?
I was fearful of that.
Yeah.
We also ended up, we had like a family wedding that went on right when we should have been mowing all the weeds before they went to seed and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of lessons learned.
I get that. I went to the field one day to cultivate. At the same time, my neighbor went boating and he met me on the road and I'm thinking one of us is wrong.
Yeah.
But when, when it's time to do things timely, it's in organics, we can't call the fertilizer dealer and say, hey, fix this for me. So
Right.
yeah, if you want to talk more about that, I don't know where you're located or anything, but
Yeah, we're in Southwest Michigan in Buchanan.
oh yeah, okay. Yeah, find me. My
Okay.
email's all over on the internet. Find me, and I've got a couple of suggestions for you.
That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you, Harold.
Yep.
I just dropped Harold's email into the chat for you. Thanks for that great question and good luck. There's a really great community here, so definitely utilize all the resources that you can. Is there anyone else that wants to come off mute and ask a question?
So
Hi, this is Dave again. I have one more question. I'm happy to ask.
Yeah. Hey, Dave.
Hi, it was kind of an economy question. I'm not a farmer or anything. So with the cost of fertilizer, commercial fertilizer seems to be going up. Is the organic farming kind of the cost benefit kind of leaning more in the favor of organic farming at this point, the way things are going? More of an opinion question.
yes. Yeah. So we do tillage. I mean, we do quite a bit of tillage to keep our fields clean, and I have some philosophies about that. Still, I've got neighbors and friends that are selling corn for over $6 and breaking even. Conventional farmers, their fertility, their seed, everything, their fuel went through the roof, and we've been able to build our yields up, keep our fields clean, and it's been profitable. Yes.
Awesome. It's good to hear. Thank you.
So one of the things I want to talk about a little bit is I'm part of a study, and we're expanding it, hoping to get another grant, but we're looking at comparing the health of the soil with the amount of nutrients in the grain. And so we're taking samples of our soil, and then we're going back where we took those samples, and we're taking the grain and having it tested for omega-3s, for protein, all the different essentials, vitamins, minerals, macro, micro. And at the end of the day, we want to know if farming organically or regeneratively makes a difference in the food that you're eating. Because, there are skeptics all over the world who say, well, you can't feed the world with organics, and the way we're doing it, we contend we can, but I'm not. We need to have some more. We need to have some more data in the trough before we go making any claims. But I think it's really important that we're looking at like the quality of the grain. And I'm sitting here in our flour mill in an office, but this is bloody butcher corn. It's actually polenta. And I've got our warthog wheat. That is our staple that this wheat, some of this seed was planted in that field where I did the second video. And then here's our rye, our package of rye. This is not a sales pitch. What I'm trying to say here is we've got to have good quality grains in order to have good quality food and good quality flour. And so it's vitally important to me because I want to feed as many people as possible. It's important that the quality of our grain is the best it can be. And I think we're working in that direction. I'm not going to lambaste conventional farmers. They're all my friends, and there's room for everybody in the agricultural world. But there was an article about 2 years ago where the pig feeders were going to be changing some of their protein sources because the soybeans that were coming out of conventional fields were not a high enough protein and didn't have enough of the amino acids in it to feed the livestock anymore. And if you can't raise grain that's good enough quality to feed livestock, there's something wrong with what we're doing. And so there was a big article out about that. And so I think it's very important that we as an agriculture industry take a step back and quit looking at how big a yield can I get and look at how good a quality can I raise. And the problem with conventional agriculture is nobody's going to pay them for that. Nobody's going to give them, they'll give them a premium for non-GMO, but they won't give them a premium for having 3% higher protein in their feed. And I think at some point, if the quality of the feed isn't good enough, they need to be looking at ways to resolve that. So, any other questions?
Yeah, we do have a few. I think everybody's stacked up pretty nicely. Let's see. Do we want to just go in order? I think that's
Doesn't matter.
Ray Bronwyn. If you wanted to ask your question.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering, do you save your own seed or do you have to buy seed in?
The only seed that we buy every year is our hybrid corn seed that we have to raise as a food grade. Our soybeans, we plant our own seed. Our wheat, we plant our own seed. Our rye, I will hold on there. We do raise some hybrid rye, and the reason for that is that's what the bakers like. And so that we have to buy from Albert Lee Seeds. We buy that rye seed, but we also raise some Danko that we use for our cover crops and stuff that we can use our own seed. And so where we can, we use all our own seed. And the thing is that I learned a long time ago, just like your soil will synchronize to your practices, I think your seed does too. So the same seed that we raise year in, year out, I think only gets better.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? What's the percentage of what you have to hold back for reseeding versus what you can sell off?
Oh, well, we plant about 1.5 bushels of soybeans and we raise 50. So, you're looking at what, man, I can't even do my math.
We'll just say 1/15.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then with wheat, it's we plant roughly 150 pounds per acre. And we harvest, most of the time we harvest somewhere around 3,500 pounds. So, you know, again, it's minimal.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Harold. We're just seeing in the chat a mention of What Your Food Ate by David Montgomery. Inspired Matt to up his Janie's Mills orders and eat more whole wheat bread. You're getting a lot of kudos. The proof is in the taste, right? And Tim said that your bread is, or his bread is way more delicious because he's been using your flours and grains, and he really loves the turkey red. We got a clap for that one. Thanks, Janet. And I'm going to go over to Sue. I'll give you, if you would like to ask your question, Sue, or I totally can if you need me to. So Sue asked, do surrounding farms affect an organic farm if they are using pesticides and herbicides? You could go into that a little bit, Harold.
Yeah, funny you mentioned that. So everybody knows us around here and, you know, knows that we're organic. So, you know, some of the new technology, if you've heard about the dicamba, quote unquote, soybeans and the 2,4-D or E3 soybeans, which are all genetically modified. The 2,4-D soybeans don't affect us like planted alongside our fields, but the dicamba does. But there's also rules in their labels that they're not supposed to be within a mile of an organic farmer. And pretty well everybody around us, they won't even plant dicamba anywhere in our area because they don't want to pay us to have to go back through transition. So everybody's pretty careful around us. We leave a 25-foot buffer strip around all our fields. So we don't like plant up to the fence row. We leave a 25-foot border. And most everybody is respectful to that. And, you know, there's restrictions on wind, and most of the farmers will try, especially around us, to be spraying their crops on a day when the wind is blowing away from us. So we're pretty fortunate in our relationship with our neighbors. But the other issue is GMO contamination in our corn, because there's no fence when it comes to pollen. And so what we do is we talk to our neighbors and find out what varieties of corn they're planting and what maturities and when they're going to plant. And we usually wait a week after they plant so that we have an offset pollination period. So our corn won't be ready to pollinate when theirs does. So we have to do a few things like that. And there is corn varieties that have a pyramase gene in them, and that's a natural gene. That pyramase gene comes from the popcorn family, and we can plant that around the edge of our fields, and then our corn will not accept GMO pollen then. So there's a number of things we can do, but pretty well everybody respects us for what we're doing, and they try and be careful not to affect either one of us.
Thanks, Harold. Okay, any last minute questions or thoughts?
How are we on time, Liz?
We're doing great. Yeah, we're early. We're 8 minutes till the end of the hour.
Okay. Is there anything else we do as organic and even about the mill that anybody has questions on? Please feel free to raise your hand, clap, honk, do whatever you need to get our attention. be glad to answer any questions I can.
I had a question in the chat about your need for tillage. And I'm wondering how much you feel like that's a need in order, I listened to your rotation and things are pretty tightly timed. So I can understand that like roller crimper and leaving planting into residue might not work for you, but I'm wondering if you think tilling is essential for you to be able to operate in organic and control your weed pressure.
So in the simple answer to you is yes, we need tillage. There's a complex answer to that, the codicil A, B, C, D, E reasons. But you know, one of the things that drives me crazy is when I read these agendas, and I'm going to call them agendas, and it's you know, a certain type of organic, or it's a certain type of no-till, or it's a certain type of this or that. My opinion is, if you want to really do something for the soil, quit using potash, quit using phosphate commercially, get rid of the salt fertilizers, get rid of the oil nitrogens, and go back to using some rotations, and the soil is going to be so much better off. What happens is, and I was on this squirrel cage for 23 years, is you feel like you've got to keep doing what you're doing in order to keep, number one, your landlord happy, your banker happy, and you know, everybody else happy that you deal with. And your dad is the biggest one. So, you know, I understand the squirrel cage concept, but one of the reasons that we require tillage is we farm heavy clay soils in East Central Illinois. And I can take you to a couple of fields if you come see me, where I can show you what happens when you go into a field that the sun can't reach the ground. It stays muddy in the spring, and you out with a planter and you compact the soil around the seed, and then your corn's 3 foot tall. And then your weeds take over. And the next thing you know, you've got a situation where you can't raise a crop because you can't get ahead of the weeds. And there are places where they can do continuous no-till, but it's not been proven on organic soils for more than 1 or 2 years. And until somebody comes up with a system that I feel would be the best for the soil, the best for us, for the best for the landowner, we're going to continue to do what we do, because I see the changes in the soil we make every year. And if it takes tillage, it takes tillage. But I'm not going to get wrapped up into doing something just because somebody thinks it's better than what I'm doing. I have to do what's right for our farm and for the people that we work with. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, thank you.
That was great, Harold. Well, I think I have time for Margaret's question. Yeah, I'll pass it over to you, Margaret.
Hi, hello. Early in one of your videos, you had mentioned that you start out with a certain amount of land and then you increased that, more fields added on to farm organically. And I'm just wondering, is there any place where I could connect land that farmers have, like we have a little bit of land, to organic farmers who would like to use that land? How do you make those connections? How did you make those connections?
Well, what happened with us was people found out that we were organic and we were close enough to their farmland that we could take it on.
Mhm.
But there is a group called the Land Connection. And a guy by the name of, I hope he doesn't mind, I don't think he'll mind me using his name, is Nathan Auberg, that just started working with him. And he's working on those kind of relationships. But you know, we farm for 24 different people right now. And, you know, it's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot to do, but there is a satisfaction to being able to do what we do that, you know, when the landowner is happy and we're happy and we're, I hope, doing a good job, then it also shows other organic or other conventional farmers that there's a possibility that they could do this, especially when they're not profitable in the, you know, operation they're doing. So I'm hoping that there will be more people. Right now, when I started in 2005 to go whole hog organic, there was only one other guy in Iroquois County that was farming organically, and he had 120 acres. And now there's about 10,000 acres of organic in Iroquois County.
Excellent. Thank you.
So thank you.
Great information, Harold. This was just a really, I loved this, like the show and tell aspect and taking us from field to field, really making us feel like we were there with you. I really appreciate you for taking the time to make the videos and give this presentation today. It helped kick off the first day of Soil Health Week. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for asking, and
Of course.
we look forward to coordinating on other things.
Absolutely. Us too. Us too. Well, there are some links in the chat if you wanted to find out where you can get products for Janie's Mill. We put a link there. We have the land connection that Harold just mentioned if you needed to check them out. And another really great presentation coming up this week on the organic field trials from Rodale Institute, if you're interested in that. And thanks, Liz Stelk, for sharing all the other events happening this week. There's one more link for you to click. But before we do go, we did create just a really, really quick poll. Oh, Liz, it's saying that we don't have that created, so I'm not sure if you have access to that poll and would like to launch it. But I, for some reason, can't see it. But I think it's just going to ask you what you thought about today. Maybe.
Oh, Liz, can you make me host really?
Yes.
See it? Okay, well, I don't see it, Liz, so carry
Well,
on.
if you enjoyed this presentation today, give us a thumbs up either through Zoom, or can you do a virtual thumbs up on the Zoom? That'd be awesome. Yay, Harold, they're loving it. Sounds like we need to take a real field trip over to you someday. That would be really fun. But
Well,
thanks for bringing us all to the farm.
well, thank you, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Take care.
You too. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.